It's like they always say, once a cheater, always a cheater. Which is why I'm actually going to be buried with my Game Genie manual. Welcome to Triple Click, where we bring the games to you. This week, we talk about cheating in video games. Because if you cheat in a game, you cheat yourself, unless, of course, it makes the game more fun. And in that situation, it's called a mod, or quality of life updates. I'm Maddy Myers.
I'm Jason Schreier.
And I'm Kirk Hamilton, and hello.
Hello.
We made
Welcome
it back again.
Hi there.
There and back again.
I hope you both enjoyed your summer break away from
I did.
Triple Click.
I spent it cleaning out my parents' house in California, and it wasn't very fun, but, so enjoyed isn't the word I'd use, but it was nice to have a break during that otherwise very stressful week.
Fair enough. I spent it just watching every television show I've been procrastinating watching. That's like what I've been doing the past 2 weeks. I had so much competition for my One More Thing this week. It was a dead heat. Just get ready, listeners. Get ready for a television show to be there. But which one?
I love that feeling when I'm like, man, what's my One More Thing going to be? It really matters. And then I cut to a point where I'm like, wait, it doesn't really matter. Just pick something. It's fine.
Right? Like I really have to decide.
Well, Kirk, what you do is you just pick three of them and find out
right.
time
I think
together.
it's the same reason that I wind up doing that. Is I'm like, well, I gotta include all these things.
Yeah. And welcome to my One More Thing, the art form of television. And then I just go on and on about everything I've been watching. No, that's not what I'm gonna do.
I spent my break logging onto Skype and just talking to myself for like an hour. So
cool. Yeah, I wasn't logged in here because that wasn't what I was doing. So I had no idea you were doing that, Jason.
No, it's just me. I just recorded it. Maybe I'll put it out there as a bonus episode.
All right, send it to me, and then I'll record my end of that conversation, and eventually we'll release it to people.
Oh, right. Isn't this an ongoing joke?
Wasn't that your plan?
Yeah.
This is a modification of that plan.
We're still working on it, but there are a few things we're doing that are in the plan. And one of those plans is this. We are playing Resident Evil 2, the recent remake of it. And why? Because Kirk Hamilton won a bet, and that means Jason and I have to play it. And so we are, and that playthrough starts with the Claire version of the game. You play through as Claire first, according to us here at Triple Click. I also agree with that. I do feel like Claire is the correct way to start the game. Yeah. So we're going to play all the way through Claire's section, and we're going to be doing that for the episode that comes out a week from today. And also, while I'm talking, I'll just remind the listener real quick, we're on the Maximum Fun network of podcasts, and what that means is we are supported by you, the listener, if you go to MaximumFun.org/join. And of course, why wouldn't you do that? Because once you did become a member of Max Fun, you would get access to our monthly bonus episodes. And this month, we're going to record one about a couple of kind of video gamey Christopher Nolan movies. We're going to talk about Inception and Tenet. And so you would get access to that episode this month, but you'd also get a huge backlog of other episodes. We watched Psych Odyssey, which is a YouTube documentary series about the making of Psychonauts 2. Really, really cool series. And also we spoiled the heck out of that series. We've also done video game ones. We talked about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and I can't remember any other things we've talked about, but there's a bunch of other.
There are no other video games.
There.
That's the only one.
Those are a couple. I mentioned two. We're going to do Nolan Cast next. So MaximumFun.org/join is the place you want to go if you want to become a member. And I highly recommend doing so. It's a good deal. And plus you're supporting us. So you get those warm, fuzzy feelings. Okay, Kirk, what are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about cheating. And all of the different ways that we might think about it. This is
Don't tell our wives. Don't let them download these.
Yes, we're talking about all of the times we have cheated on our spouses. No, we are talking about cheating specifically in games, and just all the different ways that cheating can manifest, and different thoughts that we have about it. So I guess to start this conversation, which can go and probably will go in a lot of different directions, let's just establish what we mean by cheating and some important distinctions between types of cheating. I guess really just one distinction, and that is cheating in a competitive environment versus cheating in a single-player environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought you were going to say cheating in a consensual environment where everybody knows it's happening, or cheating in a non-consensual environment. I realize the former example shouldn't perhaps be called cheating, but that's also part of what we're going to talk about today, is the colloquial use of the word cheating to describe things that everybody knows are happening, and we're all just participating in a form of bending the rules together, and we've all agreed that's okay.
So I think there are some interesting things to say and think about competitive cheating. But for me, at least, I'm much more interested in the discussion around cheating in a single player game. That is, modifying the game, finding some way to break the game or get around the game's stated rules in order to give yourself an advantage so that you can win more easily than you would if you hadn't done whatever it is that's being called cheating. I just think that leads to so many different interesting ways to engage with games that I think that can be really interesting. So maybe let's talk about competitive cheating first then, because that to me is a little more straightforward. It's generally bad to cheat when everyone is competing on a level playing field, because without, you have to have some sort of agreed upon baseline in order for a competition to feel meaningful. That said, depending on how you define cheating, you could say that a lot of things are cheating. Like maybe it's cheating to pay for a really great tutor to make you really good at something for your entire life, and you spend all this money being trained for years and years and years to get really good at something so that you then are a better competitor in the level playing field, right? Like there are ways that you can say people are cheating even in an otherwise even playing field.
Cheating?
Yeah, that's really stretching the rules.
Just having
I think
an advantage due to time and money.
If we're kind of making definitions here, I think we can draw a pretty strict delineation between violating the rules of the game or the rules surrounding the league, the competitive league, or whatever it is you're talking about, and using every possible advantage that don't violate the rules. I mean, those are pretty clear. Pretty clear. There's a pretty clear distinction between those two, I would say. And yes, I think we can all kind of agree that if you are cheating in a competitive environment against someone who doesn't know you're cheating or didn't agree to that as an option beforehand, then that is a bad thing. Whether it's just for fun, like you're playing online games of Fortnite and you're just cheating just to be an asshole, or you're like actually in some sort of tournament with stakes and money prizes or whatever it is. I mean, that's no good. Bad.
We've decided we're against
down. Triple thumbs down.
Agree. And the example I threw out earlier is a little bit more of a provocation than a deeply held belief, just to be clear. And I think that's right. And that video games open themselves up to cheating in a lot of really interesting ways compared with other sports, for example, just because a lot of times you are playing the game just on your own machine, and there's a whole industry out there of people who sell aimbots or other cheating tools that you can then use. And that's why all of these anti-cheat interfaces, these sort of middlemen, like whatever, all of the hated anti-cheat software, that's why that all exists, is because these people are trying to keep their games fair. I mean, that's, for example, why Destiny 2 doesn't work on the Steam Deck. I believe that's the case anyways, that like they have anti-cheat software that doesn't work in Linux and has to run in Windows. And as a result, you just can't play the game because they don't want anyone cheating. And Destiny 2 is actually an interesting example of a game that it does have a competitive aspect, but it's also just an online game. And I wonder if what the two of you think of cheating in MMOs, in games where you're playing online with other people, but you're not necessarily competing all the time. For example, gold farming in World of Warcraft or something like that.
Well, okay, so that's where you get into some interesting borders. So let's get into Blizzard, because I know that company pretty well. I think that it's really interesting if you look at Blizzard's history, because when they released games, Warcraft 2, StarCraft, a lot of their games have cheat codes that are built into the single player campaign, and you can use those to get all sorts of fun little tricks, and they all have very fun names. Quick tangent, there was back in the StarCraft days in the 90s, there was this group of fans called Operation Can't Wait Any Longer, or Operation Seawall, and they were like so eager for StarCraft 1 that they would like scope out Blizzard's parking lot and like see how many people were there to see if people were working on the game, which was both creepy and flattering, as one person described it to me. in my new book.
Real life data mining.
And so Blizzard, I guess, kind of honored them by putting their name as a cheat code. So if you go on StarCraft and you type Operation Seawall, it speeds up the production of your building. So
That's
of course
amazing.
it makes things go faster because they can wait it along. Anyway, what I was getting at to kind of answer your question, Kirk, is I always found it interesting that StarCraft and Warcraft had cheat codes, but Diablo and of course World of Warcraft don't. And I think the main reason for that is because one of the big motivations in a game like Diablo or in a game like World of Warcraft is, even if you're not playing competitively, it's to gear up your character, to make your character really good. And a lot of the time you sink into the game is for that purpose. And if you could just kind of type in a cheat code and jump to that point, there would be no reason to actually play the game, which is, to extrapolate further, one of the reasons that the auction house in Diablo 3 was such a humongous controversy is because it was seen as kind of a cheat code. You could just enter your credit card and buy something. And so what was the point of playing to go and farm for loot and try to get new gear for your character if you could just buy it? So, yes, I think that you can get into that question, and that raises more interesting ethical questions than like I think it's pretty clear if you're competing against people, cheating is a no-no. Is cheating a no-no if you're competing against people in less of a direct PvP sense and more of a we're all kind of showing off our gear here sense? Then it gets a little more interesting. To me, it still feels like a pretty morally dubious thing to try to cheat in a game that doesn't allow it or that strictly bans it, like Diablo or World of Warcraft, where you're kind of like taking away from the overall competitive nature or overall kind of fair play nature of it. And I would certainly feel bummed if I spent hundreds of hours trying to get some cool sword and then the guy next to me just like entered a cheat code and got it for free. So yeah, Destiny is the same way.
Yeah, that's true. I also am realizing that I agree. Thumbs down on cheating, but I'm remembering a couple of key examples from my own teen years that at the time I didn't really consider cheating, but they kind of were, which are that, so you all remember I used to play Counter-Strike with my friends, and something that we would do sometimes, this was in the days before Discord, so it was really hard to chat with each other outside the game. So there were a couple ways you could do it. One of them would be to just have a LAN party, and then you can all be talking with each other out loud while you're actually ganging up on some other players, and maybe they aren't aware that you're doing that. One could argue that that is perhaps cheating. It's certainly a little bit unfair. And then the other thing we would do that is sort of like a softer version of that is just call each other on the phone and just tell each other what we were going to do in the game. Now, I feel like for the average listener, they'd be like, well, that's not cheating because Discord exists. And like, what are you talking about? Of course, talking during a game of Counter-Strike is how you would communicate with your team. But at that time, we did kind of consider that to be like a way of getting a leg up on the other team that was like a little bit in a gray area. So that's one thing that I'm remembering where I'm like, but that seemed okay to me for whatever reason with my morals. I think because even at the time I was like, it's stupid that this isn't normalized. And there is team chat in the game. You can type. It's just easier if you're talking out loud. And like,
it's kind of hard to type. Wait, they're over here.
Exactly. I mean, and also like esports teams do that. So I'm also like, that's not really cheating, but oh, and the other thing that we would do that is absurd is that we would set up like Halo LAN parties because enough of us had Xboxes that we would just bring all the Xboxes to one person's house. And then, of course, you could play a Halo multiplayer match and just immediately talk to each other and say what you were going to do and where you were. But even that is like, it's not really cheating per se. It's more just like playing the game in a different way. And you could always call your friends on the phone even back in the day. And like that was always kind of known as something that you could do, which is why Discord is so popular now. I don't know if any of that counts as cheating, but it definitely felt like we were getting one over on the game.
What about Halo screen peeking? What about when you're playing split screen and you look over at where people are?
Screen peeking is a colloquialism of its day that I feel like I haven't heard for years, and now you've brought it back to mind again.
Am I sending the nostalgia flooding through your head?
You really are. Screen peeking. Wow.
I mean, that still comes up. So you're talking about kind of information, like information you weren't really supposed to have.
Right.
There have been, I can't remember if it was League of Legends, one of those competitive games, there was a scandal where a player was looking at the screen, like the main screen in the tournament to see the map, to see what was going on. Or I know this is a thing, it's been a thing in the past with Destiny 2 raids where different raid groups compete to get first. And as a result, they don't always like to stream, because if you're doing the raid and you're trying to get first, like your clan is going really hard at some difficult challenge, you could just turn on Twitch and look at what your competitors are doing. And if they've already solved the puzzle or figured out what step you're on, you can just do whatever they're doing. So it's the same idea as screen peeking. You're competing in a different way, right? Like, again, a Destiny raid clear competition is very different than, you know, a PvP match where you're using an aimbot or something.
Right.
But you could say that that's not sportsmanlike.
It isn't, I would say. It's dishonorable. In a way.
I think that a lot of players would agree with you. Yeah, that you're supposed to do it totally clean. And circling all the way back to Jason, what you were saying earlier about working really hard to get, you know, the sword that's the reward for beating the quest, and then seeing somebody else who, maybe if you're talking about World of Warcraft, they paid someone who just got that sword on their account and sold it to them for $50. Or going back to Destiny again, Jason, you and I played Trials of Osiris all the time. And at the time, the Trials of Osiris was this tournament that 3 players would compete, and it was really, really tough competition. It was a PvP 3v3 tournament, and you had to make it all the way through 9 cards, or 9 matches. And if you could go undefeated, you then unlocked a bunch of really sweet stuff that you could only get by going undefeated. And we, at least Jason and I, teamed up with Todd. Was that his name? He was a really great player. We met him on, at the time, NeoGAF, the forum, and he's a really nice guy, and he was really good at Destiny.
So he was like a ringer. Basically, you enlisted a ringer.
He was our ringer, and he carried us.
So you were cheating, is what you're saying.
Well, so that's one, that now were we? I don't really think so, but you know, like, we definitely brought in someone who was there because he was good. He was also a fun guy to play with, but we started playing with him because he was really good and was like, oh yeah, I can totally carry you guys. It'll be fun. But in the world of Destiny, there were also people selling paid carries, because there were players who were so good at Destiny that just two total scrubs. Yeah, they could just pay them whatever, $50, and they'd be like, I'll totally get you to Mercury, and you can get all the chest opens you want for this week for this amount of money. And that's also like, I don't know, it's a weird gray area, because with Todd, he was very good, but he couldn't quite carry us. Like, Jason and I did have to compete and play, and we did make it to Mercury, and it was really fun, and I felt good about the prizes. I think I got some terrible gun because I didn't get the messenger, the one that everyone wanted. But anyways, bygones. I'm clearly over it.
Yeah, you're so over it, and you didn't remember it at all.
I'm slowly accepting that I never got the messenger in Destiny 10 years ago.
Yeah, who cares?
Anyways, so I think that is all really interesting, and like all fits along this spectrum of, if not cheating, then just sort of stretching outside of the established method of play in order to increase your chances of victory.
Yeah, I feel like I'm okay with that, which I don't know why I'm clarifying what I am and am not okay with. I'm clearly the arbiter of all of these things in my own mind, but yeah.
It's always an interesting question to ask.
It is. I mean, it is. And I think I'm not to just transition us, I'm so much more okay with it in a single player game that it's kind of comical. Like, as compared to this conversation we're having about competitive games where I'm like, okay, like, how far do I feel like I need to go? And also I do feel like I'm competing with myself. So I have my own standards of like, is this still fun for me? Did I get some type of challenge out of this? But then when we get to single player games, I'm so much more willing to be like, this isn't fun anymore. It's going to be so much more fun if I have infinite gold or whatever it may be, whatever thing there is in the game that's holding me back. And I can just tell that that's the one thing that's rankling me. I will be like, yeah, okay, it's time. The time has come to engage in cheats. And I don't know. I'm sure at some point in my past, I had some type of turning point, but I don't remember it. It was like just a thousand tiny cuts. At some point, I just have become the person I am today who no longer cares about any of that. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't care anymore. I'm like, yeah, I'll just install cheats.
Well, a lot of older games had cheat codes built in.
That's
like
true.
The Blizzard
We should
games I
explain
mentioned
that.
before. I mean, the Konami code is an iconic example, probably the most iconic example. A lot of games, especially older ones. Well, Game Genie, although that was
a little bit
party.
different.
I'm talking about what the game developers intended.
Sure.
So a lot of these games, I mean, the people who made them put in ways for you to very easily just type in a couple of words or letters, and access God mode and make yourself invulnerable, or give yourself unlimited money or whatever it was. So it's not like the developers wanted you to be able to experience this if you wanted to. So it's not like even the makers of the games were being super precious about how, no, you, Maddy Myers, you must complete this the way that you must complete this in 3 lives and only 3 lives, and otherwise you will fail. You will not be a true gamer.
Right.
No, developers wanted people to be able to do cool stuff and play games however they wanted. And for a lot of people, I imagine, like, they just wanted to experience the story of a game, so playing through God mode was totally cool, and it was the only way they could if it was a hard game or something like that.
Yeah, I think that some of those developer shortcuts that give you God mode were also just for testing the game, because it was kind of hard and you just needed to run through and make sure that whatever this door worked, because the door hadn't been working.
Well, that exists in every game, but most developers turn them off. Like back then, a lot of developers would just leave in those controls.
Yeah, where I'm going with this, though, is I see that those kinds of codes is a little bit different from something like Metal Gear or Resident Evil, games that build in items that basically let you cheat, that you unlock through gameplay, that then actually exist in the game. So, like in Metal Gear, you get a bandana that gives you infinite ammo once you've beaten the game once, I think. Or in Resident Evil 2, actually, you unlock a bunch of really powerful weapons. I think in a lot of Resident Evil games, they give you like an infinite ammo rocket launcher that you can then take through New Game Plus. And as it starts giving you very different goals, like speed run the game, like beat the whole game as quickly as possible, it also starts giving you tools that let you do that and that don't lock you out from those achievements. In Resident Evil 2, we'll talk about this more next week, but I actually really like using the infinite combat knife, which is a knife that you can equip that then, at least for me, like it kind of changes up the way that I play, because I can like shoot out a zombie's legs and then just walk up and really quick just permanently kill it, and ammo becomes much less of an issue for me because I have this knife that never breaks. And it's like, it's cheating. I mean, I am robbing myself of the experience, or whatever that meme says. Like I'm not having the truly intense survival horror experience of like always running out of ammo and not being able to kill every zombie because I just have to run around them because I don't have enough bullets. But at the same time, it makes the game more enjoyable for me. And it was intended by the developers. They put it in there as something that someone like me can use, like in my inventory that I've unlocked, to make the game play differently. I think that's really cool. Like that kind of cheat that's not even just like a code that you need to know, but is actually an item in the game that they give you.
I've been thinking about that a lot with the Elden Ring DLC, especially because Miyazaki did an interview where he talked about how he takes advantage of every single possible thing in Elden Ring, and he described himself as bad at games and was like, I will use every summon, I will use like every possible tool at my disposal, and like that's how he sees the game as being played. And like that's also what I do, and it's part of what I enjoy about those games. And so I don't actually install cheats for Elden Ring, but I do socially cheat in the sense that there are certainly people who are like, I don't believe in using summons, we don't need to talk about those people, it doesn't matter. But I engage in every possible thing at my disposal that the game will give me if it's going to make the experience more fun for me, which I agree with you, Kirk. Like any type of thing that's like an infinite ammo bandana or whatever, I'll try it and be like, is this making the game more fun? And sometimes it super does. And it like actually feels really attuned to how the game feels to play, and almost is like, even calling it a cheat seems like a misnomer, because it's actually how the game should be played and makes it feel better to play it that way, because it's like, oh, this prized item is your reward for having dealt with some difficult thing, and it almost feels like cheating. You almost feel like you're in God mode because now you have this great item, but actually there's still enough of a challenge that it's fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, it's hard to tell sometimes. There's some games when what you're talking about, I mean, the infinite ammo bandana, that's not really intended to be like you play through the whole game and have a proper challenging experience with this. And in some games, it's just a matter of balance. Elden Ring is a good example. If you play that game with some weapons, you're going to have a much different experience than if you play it with others, just because of the way the game is balanced, intentionally or not. The one I always think about is Final Fantasy Tactics. that is a game that I believe you have played also, Kirk, where kind of maybe 2/3 into the game you get this character named Orlando, and he just like so is completely overpowered. Like he is 100 times more powerful than like even the second strongest character, and playing through the game with him really feels like you're breaking it, like you've ruined it for yourself. And actually, Maddy, I find that like sometimes taking advantage of that sort of thing makes the game way less fun. And,
for sure.
Sometimes I really don't enjoy it when a game has something like that, because I always feel compelled to use it, but also using it makes battles such a breeze that I then am just not enjoying myself anymore. So it's always kind of an interesting balance to strike there. But I don't think that's a matter of cheating, nor would I call it kind of an intentional sort of thing. It feels like a balance issue more than anything, at least in the games that I mentioned.
Yeah, I think that there's an interesting trajectory with anything that is considered cheating, where it starts as a cheat. It starts as being seen as outside of the intention of the game, but then over time it can become normalized and even be built into the game and eventually just become part of the expected experience. Like some of what we're talking about here now just manifests as accessibility settings, like difficulty settings.
Or even like Discord existing so you can call people when you're playing Counter-Strike. Yeah.
Sure, of course. But and yeah, that is a good example, actually. And when you were talking about that earlier, I was having the same thought that at one point it was seen as sort of transgressive to talk to people while playing Counter-Strike. But now, of course, that's just the norm because the technology caught up with it. But if you look at the accessibility settings for something like Nine Souls, which is a recent, very difficult Metroidvania game, there's actually really cool difficulty sliders in that game that make it much more approachable, and you can adjust the amount of damage that you take or the amount of damage that you deal. And I really like having those sorts of granular controls. Horizon Forbidden West is a similar game where I find it fun to have to take a lot longer to kill the dinosaurs in that game, like the monsters. But I don't like taking a ton of damage when I get hit. So being able to control that kind of thing makes me almost feel like I'm using something like Game Genie, which now we can talk about because that's kind of like, that's a different angle on the idea of cheating in single player games. So the Game Genie was made by Galoob, which is something I had completely forgotten and was a name that I had not heard since I was a young man.
Yep.
Galoob, the makers of Micro Machines, among other things. So bing, slight correction here. The Game Genie was actually made by Codemasters and it was sold by Galoob and Camerica. So Galoob didn't actually make the Game Genie, like I said in the episode. They just sold it. But still, remember Galoob Games? Remember Micro Machines? Remember the Micro Machines man in the commercials? He talked really fast, man. The machines were pretty micro. Okay, back to the episode. Bing! They made the Game Genie, which went on top of a cartridge and sort of existed in between the cartridge and the console and changed the game's code to allow you to do all kinds of things.
It went below the cartridge, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean like in between the cartridge and the console. Like you plugged the cartridge into the Game Genie and then the Game Genie to the console. So it was like interfaced in between the two. It changed the game's code. So it was essentially, ModDB. It's just that it worked on a Nintendo. Yep. And Nintendo actually sued Galoob over the Game Genie, saying this is infringing on their copyright, and they lost because the court ruled that no, this is just modifying something that players already own. They own the game, so they have the right to modify it, which wound up being, I think, an important ruling for the whole idea of modding games in the future, which is still something that's protected, that we're allowed to do. And now, of course, PC games are like moddable all over the place. And a lot of the mods that I really like, they aren't even doing things like granularly changing the amount of damage I take or the amount of damage I do or giving me more ammunition. They're doing things that just make the game more pleasant to play, like they're improving the user interface, like Sky UI and Skyrim, or they're giving me infinite inventory space, which I've totally done in games. And it can kind of break games sometimes, where the whole idea of, like Stardew Valley, for example, you have pretty limited inventory, and like part of the rhythm of that game is that you can only carry so much, so you have to go home and drop things off in your chest, so you have to plan your schedule a certain way. But if you use a certain mod with that game, you can just access your chest from anywhere. So suddenly you just don't have to think about that anymore, and the game becomes very different to play. But I think to a lot of people it becomes more enjoyable, and especially a game like that, which people play for years and years and years, mods like that, they're not really cheating, they're just changing the game to your taste, which I guess is maybe It's maybe like a semantic distinction, but it feels meaningful to me.
How is that not cheating if that's designed around, like, if you're changing the balance of the game in such a way to make it easier for yourself? How is that not cheating? It is, right? It's just like, I think maybe the word implies negative, like the word cheating, it sounds like you're doing something wrong.
It has a negative connotation for sure.
I think mods is a much better neutral word, because when you're modding a game, it's like, well, that's your game, you can do what you want to it. But if I said, oh, I'm modding my Destiny 2 so I can beat everyone much quicker,
I'm using an aim mod.
An aim mod, an aim assist. Well, that is what it's called, an aim assist mod. So it would be. But no, it's interesting that we hear cheats and think of, but I don't really see a difference between changing your inventory size in Stardew Valley and turning on God mode in Doom, so you don't have to worry about getting hit and having a more frustrating experience because you died.
To just think it through out loud, I think the difference is at least partly that you're changing the interface of the game rather than the gameplay experience. Or at least I think that's maybe a distinction someone might try to draw between something that changes the map to just make it easier to read, for example, or changes your inventory to make it easier to use, versus something that gives you infinite life or makes it so that your weapon just one-shots bosses.
Well, but in Stardew Valley, it's gameplay affecting because it makes it so you don't have to spend the time to go back to your house, and so it's not just changing the UI in a way that makes it like if you're playing Skyrim or something and you do an unlimited weight mod, which is great and probably very useful for a lot of people. It changes the gameplay because it means that you don't have to worry about improving your strength, for example. And so it does have an impact as opposed to just an aesthetic difference in that you just like move to the UI so it's a little bit bigger or something like that. And I do think there's a distinction there. And this is not casting judgment. Like, I think it's totally cool if people want to play a single player game in whatever way they want. But I do think it's kind of, it falls in the same category for me if it's impacting the gameplay in some way or another.
So what I like about that is that it allows an insight into how the game works and what it is that you're doing when you're playing the game. Because I think you're right. I mean, it does affect the gameplay, but the gameplay in Stardew Valley is picking things up and carrying them around and putting them in a chest, right? Like, that's what that game is.
Sure is.
And so the minute you change the way that
in
works...
a very cozy way.
Yeah.
Right. You're actually changing the mechanics of the game, where in a game like, I don't know, Skyrim, your inventory, like if it's just easier for you to access your inventory, like, is the game really about that? Does it really make a huge difference if you remove encumbrance, for example, from Skyrim? Like, yeah, you're changing the game, but how fundamentally are you changing the experience? Maybe if you do that, actually thinking it through, you are actually really changing the experience if you remove encumbrance for similar reasons. But, you know, each change to each game, it kind of raises new questions and makes you wonder what it is that you're getting out of the game in the first place and how the game works.
Well, so yeah, that leads to something I've been thinking about, which is that a lot of remakes or remasters or new versions of old games add quote unquote quality of life features that weren't there in the beginning.
Yes, this phrase that we all know, quality of life features.
Was that sarcasm? Or,
no, I think it's hilarious. I mean, what the quality of life features are is cheats in the olden days would be like in inventory improvements. It's not as difficult to carry as many things. Like, those are the kinds of quality of life changes.
All right, so Maddy Myers says quality of life improvements are
cheating.
cheats.
It's cheating. I mean, sometimes they are.
But what I'm talking about are cheats. So, like, for example, in the new, like the remastered modern ports of Final Fantasy games, you can turn on modifiers to turn off random encounters or to make all your party super powerful. In like Final Fantasy 7 and 8 and 9, you can make it so everybody's super jacked and just destroys enemies in one hit. So it's the same exact thing as when you could enter cheat codes in games, in PC games in the 90s. So this is kind of, it's interesting because it's kind of saying a couple of things at once. One, it's the developer saying you can do whatever you want with this game here, enjoy, modify it all you want. But it's also saying we need to add these cheats to make up for some gameplay that feels antiquated today to a lot of people. And that, I think, is really interesting as well. And that's one of the reasons mods are so prevalent, is because so many of these games are so tedious and frustrating in so many different ways. Bethesda games being a really good example, that people feel like, okay, I need to get some mods in in here to make this a much more pleasant experience for me.
Right. To the point that remasters incorporate mods, right? That they actually do that.
It's an interesting thing because there's so many gameplay like verbs, and kind of the language of how we play games has changed so much over the last 30, 40 years that it feels like today's standards need to be, the old games need to be updated to keep up with today's standards. And in some cases that's by using cheat codes, which I think is really interesting.
You know, it's also, I mean, this is similar to what happens sometimes when games are just updated, like not even remastered, but just they put out an update that adds quality of life settings or even just nerfs an enemy that can make people feel as though anyone doing, fighting Radon now is kind of cheating and they're not getting the true experience of fighting him back when the game came out.
The quote unquote true experience, even though there is no true experience.
The true experience being the subjectively true experience that I had when I fought him and he was really hard, right? Like that's what people are really saying.
Right.
There's journalist mode, which is super hard, and then gamer mode, which is super easy.
It kind of is though, because we are playing an advanced version of the game. We're playing the version that isn't balanced.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I wasn't kidding.
Good.
Okay, so this feeling I think lets us transition into the final subject here, which is the feeling of I did it the hard way and that was the real way, and anyone who does it in an easier way isn't really doing it. Because I think that some of what we're talking about here actually applies to a lot of life and a lot of things that we do. I think about this a lot in music, and I get a lot of questions about particularly artificial intelligence in music these days. And that causes me to look back at the history of technology in music and the ways that musicians have cheated, big air quotes that I'm doing right now, cheated over the years, right? Drum machines for a long time were seen as cheating because suddenly everyone was like, oh, you're not going to play drums anymore. You can just have a little machine do it perfectly. And no one needs to learn how to play or mic or mix or produce drums. They're just going to have these machines. Of course, that didn't happen, and drum machines
nobody
wound
plays
up.
drums anymore. That happened.
No, right? They just stopped because drums are boring and lame, and no one likes them. But people did use drum machines, but they used them to make all kinds of really interesting music. I mean, that's where electronic music came from, for example. Samples were a really similar thing where it's like, oh, so you can just sample music that you could never play on your own. You can sample some great musician and then you can put it into your own music and you say that you're making new music, but really you could never play that thing that you sampled. But people just use the samples to make something new, and on and on and on down the road. And I kind of have a feeling that something similar will happen with AI assisted music, at least with people using AI to help them come up with sounds and ideas and weave it into something that they are actually overseeing. That's different from AI generated music where the AI is just writing songs. That's kind of a separate thing. But so that's one avenue along which I kind of see this, but you can see it everywhere. I mean, every single human endeavor, really, any kind of work, any kind of creative work, there soon becomes this a change where people start using technology to do it more easily or to bypass certain processes. And then some people say, oh, well, you're cheating. You're not learning the fundamentals. You're using a digital camera, so you don't have to go to a dark room and spend all the time developing these things. You're shooting on digital, so you don't have to set the camera up and worry about the light, and on and on and on.
It's funny you say that because in college I took a class where we had to not only shoot on film, we had to edit by cutting up the film strips and piecing them together using a microfiche.
That's
it
so
was
cool,
it
though.
was hardcore. Yeah, it's interesting. I think about this as it applies to my own life, and that is in transcribing interviews, which is something I always do by hand, but a lot of people do using automated transcription software.
That's a great
and the
example.
reason that I do it by listening and typing up my interview is because A, I'm just kind of anal about mistakes and stuff, but B, more importantly, it helps me to listen back to conversations and type them out and see what I did well and see what I didn't do well for future interviews. I feel like you miss out on a lot of the learning experience by having an AI transcribe your interview for you and then not getting a chance to listen back.
They're not very good at it yet either.
The mistakes.
They'll
that's
get better
another,
at it.
That's another.
I usually end up having to listen back to most of the interview in order to fix the AI's mistakes for now.
Yeah,
but you're right.
I'm
eventually
saying,
we'll get to the
assuming
point.
that it was all
Yeah.
perfect. I think that getting to listen to it is a helpful thing. And there are a lot of things, but then on the flip side, there are a lot of mundane tasks that it's nice to see automated. I'm sure that factory workers are perfectly happy to not have to piece together things by hand in the same way that they used to. And there are a lot of technological advancements over the years that I think have objectively improved things.
Mm-hmm. Like sewing machines is a huge one. That's kind of my go-to example mentally. It's okay, yeah, sewing by hand is really hard. There's sometimes you have to do it. But yeah, I remember I learned to type really young, and I had access to computers at home because my dad brought them home from work. And so I was printing out papers for school relatively young because I just really liked typing. And I remember even then being taking notes by hand versus typing. And when I started taking my laptop to college, which I'm sure for the listeners now, they're well, of course you're going to take your laptop with you to college. But that was an actual debate when I was in college where people were well, I remember everything better when I write down all my notes by hand. And I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't read the studies, but I've always preferred typing. So for me, I was well, I'm going to type it every time. I'm faster. And this is just how I've gotten used to doing it because I learned to type so young. But even that, I think about it now and I'm yeah, I was cheating. I my whole life's been a cheat, and it's great that I'm finally coming clean about it. I've been typing this whole time. I haven't been writing by hand.
I think that it's really interesting the way that cheating can actually just be progress in disguise.
Yeah.
I think a lot about score writing. When I was in school, I took arranging classes where we had to write arrangements for a big band, for an 18-piece big band. A lot of my friends were writing by hand, but I had Sibelius. And so I was one of the only ones of them who was writing it out on a computer. And I've always been really quick with score writing software because of this. I started on it when I was, 20 years old. So I would watch a lot of my friends write these scores out by hand and then write the parts out by hand. You had to write each part out, where I would write the score and then press a button and it would just export it to the parts.
Yep.
Now that's really great, but there were certainly arguments against doing what I was doing. For example, when you write the parts out by hand, you can see if you've transposed wrong and you've got the saxophone playing a note that it can't actually play. That kind of stuff becomes clear to you, where if you export the part, especially in earlier versions of Sibelius, you can wind up with totally effed up parts that you're handing out to people without realizing it. Also, one really big difference there is that in the software, it plays back to you what the arrangement sounds like. You get MIDI notes.
Yeah.
So you can just hit spacebar and it plays you your arrangement. And you can hear oh, wait, I've kind of got a funky note down there in the second trumpet. If you're writing it out by hand, you don't get that. You have to sit at the piano. It's a completely different process. So if I had come up in the 70s and just been writing everything out by hand, I would look at someone doing that on computer and be this is ridiculous. You're bypassing the entirety of the process. You're totally changing what you're doing and doing something completely different. And that's true. It's you're cheating, and in cheating effectively inventing a new way of doing something, which is kind of true with some things in video games as well. I feel at some point a cheat just becomes an advancement and then cheating just becomes progress. And it's the most kind of provocative and incomplete thought that I've come up with while chewing on this topic for us to talk about.
A cheat becomes progress.
Yeah. A cheat can become progress.
Yeah, I think that, so going back to the Final Fantasy example I brought up before, removing random encounters is now maybe we shouldn't have random encounters in the first place to be removed. Yeah. So I do think that, you can look, and I'm sure plenty of game developers look at what's modded as kind of a useful lesson of okay, this is what people want. This is the way we should be headed. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing. But can you go too far? Can you automate everything and then just kind of remove the kind of the fun for yourself or the progress for yourself? To me, it's a little less important in video games, because in a video game, most of the time you're just playing for the satisfaction of completing that game and for your own kind of personal enjoyment and value, as opposed to for some loftier goals of wanting to write the next great novel or write the next big orchestra piece or whatever your personal ambitions are. So to me, it seems like less of a big deal as far as kind of cheating yourself if you do it in a game. But I don't know. I mean, I guess if you're hoping to be the next big Counter-Strike player, you shouldn't talk to your friends, because otherwise...
No, you have to now, actually. You have to. It would be crazy if you didn't. It would be very, very weird if you didn't. I just have a confession to make before we conclude the cheating, which is way back when we were all playing Final Fantasy VI together, I got stuck during the Phantom Train section, and my last save was way, way, way back, and I installed a cheat so that I'd have infinite items so that I could resurrect my party, and I didn't confess it on the episode, and I just felt like I needed to come clean with you.
I'm surprised you did that, but not turn off random encounters.
No, that's just not the one I installed. And even at the time, I was like, am I changing how I feel about Final Fantasy VI? I mean, people can go back and listen to the episodes and they can judge for themselves as to whether that truly changed my experience or not. But I think it was important that I did it because I never would finish the game otherwise. I mean, I had to finish the game, but I did feel weird about it. And I was planning to tell you guys at the time, but I didn't.
I mean, you not only cheated the game, you cheated yourself.
I did. And I feel better now that you two know. That was the main thing coming into this episode, was that I was like, I have to tell them about that time I installed that mod. I'm glad I did.
It's good that you finally came clean.
Yeah. Got it out there.
So yeah, this is, I think, just a really interesting topic that's led me to some very interesting places that are currently live conversations that are happening in the worlds of art. I mean, this is a really live thing in music right now. Just talking about, is music too easy to make? Is there a such thing? Does that lead to degraded music?
That's amazing. What a conversation.
Yeah, there are a lot of people talking about
it's
this.
It's a good question. If you could go and an AI machine and just type in, write me a song that sounds like Kanye West, then that's kind of a crazy concept. Yeah, it's an interesting conversation for sure.
Right. And then all the gradients in between that and, sitting down and writing something out by hand and having people record it, in a studio onto tape that you then have to cut together to edit. Like there's this whole vast middle ground, and there are certainly no hard and fast answers. Anyways, this has been a fun topic, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners will have some interesting things to say. So yeah, that is our hot topic conversation on cheating. Let's take a break and come back for one more thing.
Hello, sleepyheads. Sleeping with Celebrities is your podcast pillow pal. We talk to remarkable people about unremarkable topics, all to help you slow down your brain and drift off to sleep. For instance, the remarkable actor Alan Tudyk.
You hand somebody a yardstick after they've shopped at your general store. The store's name is constantly in your heart because yardsticks become part of the family.
Sleeping with Celebrities, hosted by me, John Moe, on MaximumFun.org or wherever you get your podcasts. Night-night.
The following are real reenactments of pretend emergency calls.
911. My husband! It's my husband! Calm down, please. What about your husband? He loads the dishwasher wrong. Please help! Please help me! Where are you now, ma'am? At the kitchen table. I was with my dad. He mispronounces words intentionally.
There are plenty of podcasts on the hunt for justice, but only one podcast has the courage to take on the silly crimes. Judge John Hodgman, the only true crime podcast that won't leave you feeling sad and bad and scared for once. Only on MaximumFun.org.
And we are back for one more thing. Maddy, why don't you go first?
It's my long-awaited television show selection. Could have been anything, but I'm going with Suicide Squad Isekai, which is an anime that I'm watching on Hulu right now. Hulu aggressively marketed this towards me, and I was like, Hulu, stop doing this. I engage with superheroes all the time. I don't know if I could deal with another Suicide Squad property. How many times can I see Harley Quinn in something? I don't know. I don't know if I care. But I'm really glad I gave it a chance because it's actually really funny, and I think more people should watch it because it's not what I expected. So the name Isekai refers to, this is a Japanese word, but it refers to a storytelling trope. This is very important, so I have to actually explain this. This does matter.
Yeah, go for it.
It refers to a storytelling trope where a character, or in this case, a group of characters, an ensemble cast, get taken out of the world that they know and transported to an alternate universe that's completely different in every way. And in this case, and this is kind of like an isekai stereotype, but it's very funny to see the Suicide Squad in this scenario. They are in a medieval world. So there's like orcs and princesses and knights and just fantasy magic and shit, and like just stuff that is absolutely nothing like the world of a typical Suicide Squad comic or story that I have seen many times before. And it is so great to just see these characters just get plucked out of Gotham City, where they're, you know, running around doing shenanigans and, you know, fighting with goons and bad guys in Gotham, and then just suddenly be fighting a dragon. And it's really good. I don't know who came up with this idea, but it's extremely funny. And I now think that all superhero stuff should be like this. It should be just completely different from anything we've ever seen before, which is remarkably difficult to do. But Suicide Squad Isekai has pulled it off. And I'll also say that the Clayface characterization on this is really good. I usually think Clayface is a really funny character because he's like a shape-shifting character, and he's a failed actor in a lot of interpretations of him. And he is the character in this anime who knows the word isekai, is familiar enough with the circumstances to like repeatedly refer to it. He's kind of like the one who's capable of identifying storytelling tropes, and that is always like a funny character to me. So I really like Clayface, but just in general, I think Suicide Squad Isekai is a really fun example of a way to do a different kind of superhero show that I've never seen before. I really
Sounds like
it.
that should have been the video game.
Maybe, yeah. That would have been weird and fun.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is it in Japanese with English subtitles, or is it in English?
They have Japanese, but I'm actually watching the dub because I think the English voice actors are really good.
So it's originally in Japanese.
Yeah, you can watch it either way if you want to. I just think the dub is really fun, personally. But they're
Isn't
both
there
good.
a new Kite Man show also?
There is, yeah. I haven't seen that.
Kite Man has his own show.
Kite Man does have his own show. DC is out here. They're doing
a lot of
a lot.
animated DC stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Jason, what is your one more thing?
I went to a concert on Sunday for the first time in like 5 years.
Nice.
Can't imagine why you wouldn't have gone to a concert for 5 years.
Well, I had a child 5 years ago.
Yeah, it was more
as
the
it turns
child
out.
than
that's what I
the
was
pandemic, I would guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm explaining it for the listeners, Kirk,
Sure.
in case some of our audience doesn't know. So I went to a concert. I went to see Blink-182 at Citi Fields. My wife
Was
got
everyone
us
else your
tickets.
age in the audience?
Well, that's part of what I want to. I was curious. That's like the thing my wife and I were talking about. Like, do you think it'll be people in their 20s who like go to concerts a lot? Do you think it'll be like millennials and Gen Xers who like listen to Blink-182 in the 90s? Like, what's it gonna be? Turns out it was all of the above. It was like a humongous mix of people. I mean, so let me kind of set the scene for you guys. So this was at Citi Field. I've gone to many shows in my life, but they are almost entirely in small venues where like you stand in a pit and you rock around or mosh in some cases, as opposed to big stadium shows, which I generally don't like. And this kind of, going to see a concert at a baseball stadium is not ideal. It's not like you're sitting in a small section, and I mean, you can stand the whole time if you want, but it's still kind of like, it's very big. There are 40,000 people there. That said, I was still very curious to see what it would be like. And so, the demographics of the crowd were, I saw everything from like, middle-aged people in their 30s and 40s like me to like, 8 to 10 year olds. In some cases, wow. I saw like one dad with his daughter, and my wife was like, "Oh, that's going to be you in a few years." I saw, and then also boomers, like people in their 60s, people in their 70s. Like it was like a total wild mix. A lot of the people there seemed like pretty casual fans. Like they would only get on their feet for like the big hits when Blink played those. All the small things and like I Miss You and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there were it was a pretty wildly diverse and kind of demographically interesting crowd. As far as the show, it was pretty good. There were a couple openers. One of them was good. This band Pierce the Veil is pretty good. And then Blink came on and did a bunch of silly things, as they always do. Made a bunch of sophomoric jokes and played a bunch of songs. And Tom DeLonge, who is now back with the band after many years in an absence, he is kind of infamous for sounding terrible live. And he did, of course, because he always does. And yeah, they were very entertaining. In the middle of one song, Mark Hoppus, their bassist and one of the two singers, in the middle of playing "Damn It," which was one of their singles way back in the day, he sung Sabrina Carpenter's "Espresso," which is very entertaining.
Hell yeah!
Like as a mashup. That's fun.
Yeah, like in the middle of it,
Yeah.
on the bridge, he like sings a couple of verses of it.
He just has it so stuck in his head that it just came out.
it just came out. He couldn't help himself.
I get it.
Travis Barker, the drummer, always does this thing where like he flies in the air on a platform and like plays the drums in the air.
No, nice Tommy Lee style.
Wow. Yeah, Tom was wearing a shirt that said like UFOs are real. Very entertaining. Mark came out and he was like, "Oh, so this is where the Mets lose." It was very, very entertaining show. I really enjoyed it. It's fun being around live music in a way that it like really brought me back. Again, the stadium thing is really just not my jam. They do have like a floor and like people can do the standing room section, but it's so much more expensive than just like regular kind of seats. We had decent seats, but still pretty far away from the band. But yeah, it was good. Kind of, it was nice feeling nostalgic, tapping into 20 years ago, 25 years ago when I used to listen to this music. It was a lot of fun. Fun show. Enjoyed it.
That's awesome.
That's my one more thing.
Yeah, man, concerts are fun.
Yeah,
stadium
fun.
shows, the sound can also kind of be a bummer.
This is like it's
more
a big
about like the
open
vibe
baseball
of being with a bunch
arena.
of people who like the band, though, and that's like sounds like an experience
true.
you had, which is fun.
Yeah, well, so when I was in high school, I would go to shows all the time, mostly like pop punk shows in the city, in these like
that's a very
gnarlier
different-
venues.
yeah.
I mean, when you're going to like CBGB's or like Hammerstein Ballroom or like Irving Plaza, it's like you're maybe 200 people packed in a room as opposed to 40,000 people in a massive stadium. But yeah, that's Blink-182. It was also, this was some fun serendipity because Blink-182 and Green Day were my first ever concert like 30 years ago. No, not 30, 25
and this
years
is your
ago.
last ever concert. You're never going.
And this is my last
to
ever
another
concert.
one.
Never gonna go back.
Great.
You've closed the loop. Nice. Well, I'll bring us home. My one more thing is a 1996 film called Twister that I watched with my nieces over the weekend that I would imagine a lot of people are rewatching right now because
I was going to check it
for
out
the
too
sequel?
because of the sequel.
Yes, because of the sequel, Twisters with a dollar sign is coming out or is out now. I think
it
that
really
maybe,
with a dollar sign?
No, that's
just an
a
aliens
reference to
joke.
the- That's an aliens joke. So I think it's out now. I hope it's still in theaters when my nieces come up and visit. They're visiting in a couple of weeks, and we might go see it with them. It was a lot of fun to watch this movie. I really enjoyed it. I loved this movie back when it came out, and it's kind of fun to go back to this particular era of Hollywood when it was 1996. So computer graphics were on the way up, but they weren't everything. And almost all of this movie is in camera. Like there are so many scenes that are just, they drive a friggin' truck through a house in that movie. And it's awesome. Like when it happens, you are watching a truck go through a house. And there's a lot of that in the movie. A lot of really gorgeous helicopter shots of trucks off-road going through cornfields. And it just has a really killer visual look to it. The special effects hold up for the most part. There's some kind of gooey CG. The CG stuff is the weakest. I think everybody remembers the cow that goes flying by. It's pretty fake looking in that scene, but it's also a funny scene. So, whatever. It's a really charming movie. It's such a hangout movie. It's so about this group of misfits. Alan Ruck and Philip Seymour Hoffman are two of the members of their crew. To anyone who doesn't remember, this is a movie about like a crew of tornado chasers. And what's his name? Bill Paxton, who it's just so funny hearing his voice after seeing True Lies so many times. It's impossible to take him seriously as a leading man. But I do love Bill Paxton, and he and Helen Hunt are estranged, about to be divorced, and Bill Paxton comes back to the fold to try to get her to sign his divorce papers, but really kind of because he can't let go of chasing twisters. And then there's a kind of epidemic of tornadoes. I think they're in Oklahoma, and they wind up running around chasing the twisters and trying to get Dorothy, this device they've invented, launched up into the twisters in order to study them.
I feel like this was like the era when he was in everything, Bill Paxton. Like he was in Apollo 13 and like Titanic. Like he was in all these movies, like one after another.
Paxton is such a working guy. Yeah. I think of him as Aliens and then True Lies. He was one of Cameron's go-to goobers, and he just gives so many lines. Game over, man. Like his voice. I got a tiny dick. It's pathetic, or whatever it is he says in True Lies. Like, it's just very hard to then see him be like, I'm the leading man, and not be like, no, you're not. You're the used car salesman who tried to seduce Jamie Lee Curtis. Anyways, he is great, and Helen Hunt is great. And I don't know, there are a lot of just fun scenes with them all hanging out, eating steaks at her Aunt Meg's house. And like, I don't know, it's got a really tangible sort of social chilled out vibe. Also because there's no real bad guys like Cary Elwes from The Princess Bride. He's kind of the bad guy. There's a great line where they're like, he's in it for the money, not the science. Which is just very 90s too. Like, this is all we really had to worry about is like their twisters. And if we could only have warning, then this wouldn't happen. And that's kind of the whole movie. Yep. But man, the set pieces of it, there's a great scene, of course, where they're watching The Shining at a drive-in movie. And then the twister appears behind the screen and like rips through the screen as Jack is axing through the door. It's directed by Jan de Bont, who I believe was the DP on Speed. So he kind of came up as a cinematographer and then became a director. Anyways, super fun movie. I think a lot of people are probably going to watch it before watching the sequel. I hope the sequel is good. I hear it's pretty dumb, but also pretty fun. And to anyone who wants to hear a really interesting conversation about it, I actually listened to this podcast episode a little while ago without planning to watch the movie. I've just been listening to this podcast. So this kind of doubles as a podcast recommendation. You Are Good, which
classic
is...
Kirk move.
Yep. Just like we said before.
Well, not really. I mean, this is about Twister, though. So this
Every
is,
time he says not really.
Yeah.
So You Are Good is a podcast hosted by Sarah Marshall and Alex Steed. Sarah Marshall of You're Wrong About, and Alex Steed is her co-host. It's a really cool movie podcast. It's actually a really different kind of movie podcast from the other one that I listened to a lot, which was Blank Check with Griffin and David. I'm sure a lot of people know that one. Mm-hmm. These are both fairly popular, but that podcast is much more like industry, much more backstory, much more sort of craft and technical stuff. You Are Good is much more just about like feelings and what it's like to watch the movie and what it says about us. And it's a really great podcast. I've been loving it. And their Twister episode is really, really good. So I'll put a link for that in the show notes for anyone who watches Twister and wants to hear a good podcast episode about it. But yeah, Twister, man, good movie. They made some good movies in the 90s. Even the dumb movies were pretty
really
fun to
did.
watch.
I'm excited to rewatch it too.
Yeah, it's good. All right. Well, that's that for this episode. I thought this was a really fun conversation about cheating and look forward to cheating and then having it become innovation in new and creative ways in the future.
Don't cheat, kids.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening. And I will see the two of you next week.
See you next time.
Bye.
Triple Click is produced by Jason Schreier, Maddy Myers, and me, Kirk Hamilton. I edit and mix the show and also wrote our theme music. Our show art is by Tom DJ. Some of the games and products we talked about on this episode may have been sent to us for free for review consideration. You can find a link to our ethics policy in the show notes. Triple Click is a proud member of the Maximum Fun Podcast Network, and if you like our show, we hope you'll consider supporting us by becoming a member at MaximumFun.org/join. Find us on Twitter at TripleClickPod, send email to tripleclick@MaximumFun.org, and find a link to our Discord in the show notes. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows.
Supported
directly
by you.